Rod Covlin seemed to have it all. He was young, handsome, and brilliant. A world-renowned backgammon champion who had won prestigious tournaments. He married Shelley Danishevsky, an heiress to a banking fortune. They lived in a luxurious apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side. But behind the wealth, a dark secret festered. Their life was a charade. Their marriage was a battleground. Rod seethed with resentment. Shelley disappeared in January 2009, gone without a trace. Her disappearance shocked their affluent community. Rod played the grieving husband. He was a master manipulator and a cold-blooded killer. Rod Covlin and Shelley Danishevsky's relationship was troubled from the start. They met in 1998 through a mutual friend. They were drawn to each other's charisma and intelligence. Rod, the backgammon prodigy, was on the rise. Shelley, the daughter of a wealthy banker, was sophisticated and charming. They married in a lavish ceremony in 2000. Their future seemed bright, but beneath the surface, cracks began to appear. Rod's controlling nature emerged. He was envious of Shelley's wealth. He resented her close relationship with her family. Arguments became commonplace. The tension between them was palpable. Shelley confided in friends and family. She expressed fear and unhappiness. Rod's temper flared. He became verbally abusive. Shelley wanted out. She initiated divorce proceedings in 2008. This decision ignited a powder keg of rage in Rod. He stood to lose everything: his wife, his children, his lavish lifestyle. He vowed to fight her every step of the way. His jealousy and resentment grew. A sinister plan began to form in his mind. January 31st, 2009, dawned cold and gray in Manhattan. It was a day that began like any other, but would end in chilling uncertainty. Shelley Danishevsky, 47, was getting ready to take her young daughter to school. But Shelley never made it to school that morning. She vanished without a trace. Her cell phone went unanswered. Her purse and keys remained untouched in her apartment. The last person known to have seen her alive was her estranged husband, Rod. His performance was unconvincing. There was a coldness in his eyes. Shelley's family suspected foul play. Rod Covlin, the backgammon champion, had a dark secret. In the wake of Shelley's disappearance, whispers of Rod's volatile temper and controlling behavior began to surface. Friends and family shared stories of his jealousy, his resentment toward Shelley's wealth, and his increasingly erratic behavior. The police, initially treating the case as a missing persons inquiry, started to focus on Rod as their prime suspect. He maintained his innocence, claiming ignorance about Shelley's whereabouts. He hired a high-powered attorney. He portrayed himself as a victim, a grieving husband falsely accused. But his facade began to crumble under the weight of mounting evidence. Investigators discovered that Rod had a history of violence. He had been physically abusive toward Shelley in the past. He had threatened her. He had made it clear that he would rather see her dead than grant her a divorce. His financial motives were also impossible to ignore. He was deeply in debt. He stood to inherit millions from Shelley's estate if she were to die. The pieces of a sinister puzzle were falling into place. As the investigation into Shelley's disappearance intensified, her father, Abe Danishevsky, made a heart-wrenching plea to the public. He offered a substantial reward for any information leading to his daughter's whereabouts. Appearing on television, his voice trembling with emotion, he begged for her safe return. Abe refused to believe that his daughter was gone, clinging to the hope that she was still alive, somewhere out there, unaware of the turmoil her disappearance had caused. He vowed to never give up searching for her, but deep down, a father's intuition told him something was terribly wrong. He knew that Rod was responsible for Shelley's disappearance. He had seen the darkness in his eyes and had witnessed the way he treated his daughter. Determined to bring his daughter's killer to justice, Abe used his wealth and influence to keep the pressure on the police, hired private investigators, and would not rest until the truth was revealed. Months turned into years. The investigation into Shelley's disappearance dragged on. The police, despite their suspicions, lacked sufficient evidence to charge Rod Covlin with a crime. He remained free, living in a state of legal limbo. But the net was closing in. Investigators were meticulously piecing together the events leading up to Shelley's disappearance. They uncovered financial discrepancies, found inconsistencies in Rod's alibi, and discovered witnesses who had overheard his threats against Shelley. In 2010, a glimmer of hope emerged when hikers stumbled upon human remains in a wooded area near the Hudson River. The location was significant, close to where Rod had been known to hike. DNA testing confirmed the remains were Shelley's. The discovery of her body sent shockwaves through the community, dashed any lingering hopes that she might still be alive, and shifted the focus of the investigation from a missing persons case to a homicide. With Shelley's body found, the investigation took on a renewed urgency. The medical examiner's report delivered a chilling conclusion. Shelley had been strangled. The manner of death was homicide. Rod Covlin, the only person with a clear motive and opportunity, became the prime suspect. The police and the district attorney's office worked tirelessly to build a case against him. They interviewed witnesses. They gathered forensic evidence. They pieced together a timeline of Rod's movements on the day of Shelley's disappearance. They discovered he had made incriminating statements to cellmates while in custody on unrelated charges. He had bragged about getting away with murder. He had boasted about how he had disposed of the body. The case against Rod Covlin was circumstantial, but it was strong. It painted a picture of a cold and calculating killer who had planned and executed his wife's murder to inherit her fortune and escape the constraints of their marriage. As the prosecution prepared its case, the full extent of Rod Covlin's manipulation and deceit became horrifyingly clear. He had not only murdered his wife, but he had also used his own children as pawns in his twisted game. He had coached them on what to say to the police. He had fed them lies about their mother's disappearance. He had used their love for him as a shield to deflect suspicion. The prosecution presented evidence of Rod's financial motives. He had been living beyond his means. He had taken out large life insurance policies on Shelley. He had forged her signature on documents to gain control of her assets. They also revealed his history of violence towards women. He had a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior. He had threatened Shelley and other women in the past. The prosecution argued that Rod Covlin was a dangerous narcissist who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The trial of Rod Covlin was a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with reporters, spectators, and members of both Shelley's and Rod's families. The tension was palpable. The stakes were high. The prosecution presented a methodical and compelling case. They laid out the evidence of Rod's guilt. They painted him as a manipulative and ruthless killer. The defense argued that the case was circumstantial. They claimed that the police had tunnel vision. They insisted that Rod was innocent. But the jury was not swayed. After deliberating for several days, they reached a verdict: guilty. Rod Covlin was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of his wife, Shelley Danishevsky. The verdict brought a sense of relief and justice to Shelley's family and friends. It had been a long and agonizing wait. But finally, the man who had taken their beloved Shelley away from them had been held accountable for his crimes. Rod Covlin's conviction sent shockwaves through Manhattan's elite. The case was a stark reminder that behind the veneer of wealth and privilege, darkness can lurk. It exposed the dangers of unchecked greed and the devastating consequences of domestic violence. Rod was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, paying the price for his heinous crime. He had traded a life of freedom and luxury for a cold, hard cell. Shelley's legacy lived on through her children, who were being raised by her loving family. Her story served as a cautionary tale about the importance of recognizing and escaping abusive relationships, and it highlighted the need for greater awareness and support for victims of domestic violence. The case of Rod Covlin, the backgammon champion turned murderer, would forever be etched in the annals of true crime. It was a chilling reminder that evil can wear many faces. And sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones we invite into our homes and our hearts.